the things we used to do, which was over touching when we were dating and over communicating, was never who we really were. What you fell in love with was the hunt. Here's a written question. How do I get my husband to communicate with me like he communicates with other people? He seems to have the energy and all the energy in the world for his coworkers and friends. He's even vulnerable with them. But when it comes to me, it's like pulling teeth, trying to get him to open up and be excited to talk to me. What tips do you have for people in this situation? Wow, such a good question. I just actually taught about this. Notice the question is from a wife about her husband. And he doesn't bring the same energy, it sounds like, to her that he does to everyone else. It's super common, right? A little background for kind of how I look at this. When we were all falling in love, we all were sold a bill of goods. That sounds kind of pessimistic, right? But when we were first out there dating, do you remember how hard you worked to land the person? It's like fishing, how hard you have to work to get that fish into the boat, right? And especially a big fish. You're gonna work that fish. And that is so exciting. Everybody that loves fishing loves that moment of it. But you'll notice is once they're kind of stuck and they're caught and you pull them out of the water, and maybe even when you have them in the boat, some flip, some will just flip. Those are ones with a lot of energy. But a lot of them, they just kind of calm down. Some of them, they're near death. They're on their way to death. They're not breathing, but they'll calm. Now, I'm not saying that's your partner, but what I am saying is what you fell in love with was the hunt. What you fell in love with was everything they were doing to try to win you. When you guys were probably first dating, he was way more communicative. He was way more attentive. He was way more the life of the party. Woo, just everything you needed him to be. And it worked, didn't it? There was nothing he could do that was ever wrong. He was the life of the party. You just loved everything about him. Everything. Even the weird things that people are like, that's kind of weird. You're like, no, it's not. It's so cute. You just loved it because you were drinking the Kool-Aid. And we all are in that early stage of love. I call it yearning love. And it's just kind of nature's way to get us to marry, to get us to procreate, to get us to win the game, right? But the funny thing is when we finally get them and we finally make these promises or these covenants or these commitments, now we're in. Now, here is the funniest thing. Now that we're in with each other, you don't feel a compelling need to have to touch on him 24/7, right? Because you're just not feeling it. You're not in the mood to do that. So you don't touch on him all the time. Or you don't think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. You now realize what he is. And he's just a great guy. He's a great guy, don't get me wrong. But he does this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. He could do this better, this better, this better, this better. And meanwhile, by the way, he doesn't act like the life of the party. And he doesn't talk your ear off anymore. And he doesn't bring home all this energy. Now, what both of those things that we now are doing in our relationships that are less than we used to do, we could interpret them as signs of not being loved anymore. Or we could interpret them as signs that our partner is comfortable. They feel safe. Generally speaking, when men are not out there having to be the life of the party and just be up and totally up, it's usually an indicator that they feel comfortable. When the lion is all puffed up and looking out and they're just all tough and they're amazing and they're strong, that is not a sign that they are feeling safe. But when they're rolling around in the dust on their back, that's the sign they're comfortable and they're safe. So if your partner comes home from work and isn't necessarily all energy and all bubbly, it might be better to interpret it as he's safe. He doesn't feel a need to put on a facade. But back to your point, when he's out with friends and he's just back to the life of the party guy, notice what he's doing. He's fighting for status and hierarchy, which means he's actually back in the fight. So we have this weird dilemma that every one of us faces. When my wife can say she doesn't want to be physically intimate with me today, it actually is an incredible sign that she's safe. She doesn't feel compelled to have to be all touchy, right? She can go take her break and go take some space. And that's a sign that she's safer with me to say that. It could also be a sign that she doesn't like me, but don't always interpret it that way. And if your husband isn't the life of the party with you, it's because he's actually really comfortable. Now, doesn't mean we should stay there, by the way. But remember, when there's two things going on with communication, and they're usually at odds with each other, statistically, we know when women communicate, this is according to Deborah Tannen, when women communicate, their primary goal with talking is bonding. And that's why this doesn't work for you in this question, because it doesn't feel like he's bonding with you because we're not communicating with a lot of energy. You feel like he's giving his bonding to someone else. That's not how men bond. Men don't bond talking. Weirdly, they do bond touching. They get more oxytocin hugging and having sex than they do talking. Women actually can get some oxytocin talking. They can get that oxytocin connecting, which is why it's so bonding for you. So the primary goal for female, Deborah Tannen says, is bonding. But the secondary goal for men, the primary goal for a man when they talk is just to transfer data. The secondary goal for a man is to maintain status or hierarchy. And it might be that when he's out fighting to be the life of the party, he's trying to play for status. But when he comes home, he feels comfortable in his status. So the way we fix it, so that you get your bond and he gets his piece, we can talk about it and we could get very real. I'd go share this video with him and I would show him that we're just different that way. But when I walk into my house and my wife says, "Hey, how was your day?" I don't look at that as she's asking for data anymore. I used to think, oh, my wife is inquiring about my day. My day was fine. Boop. Data transferred. But what I see is she's trying to connect to me. So then what I try to do is prioritize a connection with her so that we feel bonded with her. And she tries to prioritize other ways to bond with me, which would be more touch, more positive talk. Again, if we're going to talk about something and every time I talk to you, you're going to lower my status because you're going to tell me what I'm doing wrong, I may not want to go there. And I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but these differences we're different, right? And we're different for a reason. And these reasons, we actually remember the things we used to do, which was over touching when we were dating and over communicating, was never who we really were. They were always our hormones pushing us more. And when we recede back to what we really are, a lot of times we look at each other and we're like, oh, well, this isn't half as exciting as I thought it would be. Now where you are is now you're just in the traditional normal relationship. And now what we have to do is learn to communicate and become one so that I know what you need to bond. And we're going to create mutual benefit again. And you know what I need to bond. And in some regard, you should feel really comfortable that he doesn't have to go game and dance like a monkey to feel safe with you. Do you know what a relief it is to walk in the house and not have to put on the show? But what we might need to do is just say, I just want some of that energy. So can you bring home some of that energy to me? Yeah. And then we can find a mutually beneficial solution.